Hey, how you doing? Okay, so first off, I want to apologize to James. James, you sent me an awesome question. I turned it into a video podcast. It's going up next week instead of this week. Apologies for that. Something awesome happened yesterday that I wanted to share with everyone. It's extremely important. And it was when I was asked to appear on an audio podcast for obesity. The podcast is called Reversing Obesity. It's done by John Buchanan. It's awesome. It's an amazing podcast for anyone who is trying to battle obesity or battle weight or get their body image under control. You definitely need to check it out. You can search for it on iTunes. It's called Reversing Obesity with John Buchanan is the host. We did a great interview yesterday. We covered a lot of stuff. There was a couple things that I would love to have covered that we didn't cover, so I'm going to cover a couple of those things, or at least one of those things at the end to put an exclamation point on this awesome podcast that we had yesterday. I wanted to share it with you. There's not going to be a whole lot of video. It's just going to be either our logo and his logo or my face and his face if I can get a picture of John. That's it until the very end where I come back and I explain the one more point that I want to definitely hit on regarding obesity and weight control, that type of thing, and how to make change that sticks. Okay, so here it is, the podcast that I did with John Buchanan on reversing obesity. Hope you love it. Go!
Let's Reverse Obesity, Episode 18. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Reverse Obesity, the show about giving you the courage, support, tools, and motivation to finally live a healthier lifestyle, reduce your weight, and improve your quality of life. This show talks about the physical, mental, and spiritual causes of obesity. I will bring you the latest articles, gadgets, and research on the topic of obesity, and together we will use this information and these tools to reverse the process that causes obesity. I'm your host, John Buchanan. 1/3 of all people in the United States are obese, and I'm in that group. But I'm determined to change that in myself and in you. If you're like me, you've tried every diet and failed, and then just gave up. Well, I say, let's try again. In this episode, I want to talk to you about where I've been and the direction this show will take in the future. But I want to do that later. Right now, I want to get right to the interview I did with Sean Webb from the I Am podcast. I found Sean actually from listening to Pat Flynn's podcast on smart passive income. I mean, what are the chances? I got to say this. If you are like me and you've been fighting this forever like me and you failed forever like me, then I say hunker down, get a pen and paper out, or go to the Let's Reverse Obesity website, because in the show notes, there's going to be some work for you to do. This show, the I Am podcast, is life-changing. Now, we throw that word around a lot. This is life-changing, but this is life-changing because I think we found the answer to our problems. And it's kind of simple, and it's amazing that no one else has followed this so far. Listen, let's be honest. You and I, we know how to diet and exercise. We know how to do it. We've done it all. Weight Watchers, liquid diets, protein diets, every diet we've done. We've had success in the beginning, but something is going on there that makes us go back to our old ways, and those old ways are basically killing us. This, what Sean's doing right now, in my opinion, will break that chain. It's worked for me, and I really think it's going to work for you. I'm really excited about this interview, and I want to roll into this interview right now. My guest today is Sean Webb from the I Am podcast. The I Am podcast is where Sean answers all the questions about spirit, spirituality, inner peace that you ever wanted to ask, and where he shares the secrets of humanity and divinity through the better understanding of both. Sean, how did I do? I got to tell you, the me is very excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. I'm kind of honored to be on your podcast because, I got an email from you a couple days ago saying, hey, let's do this interview. And I was like, yeah, let's totally do it. And then I started listening to your podcast and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And now I'm really excited to do this thing because I think you're just delivering a ton of value to a lot of folks who are probably in need of a lot of value on being able to understand how to help themselves, because that's one of the biggest problems that we have a lot of time is how to figure out how to get ourselves back out of the holes that we dig ourselves into a little bit, and so that's what I'm kind of doing on the emotions and inner peace side, or trying to do at least. And I just think your podcast is awesome.
So I heard you on the Pat Flynn's podcast. I just lost.
Smart Passive Income.
Smart Passive Income. Sorry, Pat. I listen to it every week. So for the past month, I've been searching for something to deal with my emotions because I was an emotional eater. Right. I grew up in the 60s. I had a very strong father figure. You didn't show your emotions. You were a man. You didn't show them. And so what I did was I ate. There's addiction on both sides of my family. So my drug of choice was food. I have people that would use alcohol in my family and drugs. Yep. So my last podcast was with Dr. Nina, and she told me that what I'm basically doing is I'm using food as a coping mechanism. So I stopped, and I said, okay, I'm not going to eat when I'm feeling emotions. And I couldn't handle it. I was like, oh my God, I've never felt these before. So I didn't know what to do. So now I haven't done a podcast in about a month because I had to figure out this is the next step for me.
Right.
So then I hear you, and you come up with the most simple equation for how to handle emotions. It makes so much sense. I've never heard of this before. And please tell me your background in psychology and emotional training.
Sure. Well, that's going to be a short story. I don't have any background in psychology at all. And the psych PhDs that I'm now working with that are kind of on my research team, and I kind of think that that's one of the reasons that I was able to come up with a better system than what the psychologists were using. Because, if you go to college, I went to college and with everybody else and that type of thing. But if you go through the psych path to get a MA or PhD in psych, you're basically taught the same stuff that everybody else is taught, and you're taught the same type of thinking that everybody else uses in figuring out, what makes people tick, what makes people do the things they do, and psychology in general. And so I came at it from a totally different path. About 12 years ago, I had attained a high level of personal success, or supposedly what's personal success. It's, I had this 6-digit job, and I had a nice house, and I had the convertible classic car and a motorcycle, and import luxury sedan as well, and a pretty girlfriend that is now my wife of 10 years. So all that worked out. That was awesome. But I'd attained all this level of personal success or business success that was supposed to make me happy. And I realized that I wasn't happy. And so a lot of us at that point fall into okay, well, what do I need to change? What material thing in my life do I need to change to make myself happy? Do we need to add kids to this bad situation? That type of thing. Do I need to change my employer? Do I need to get a boat? Do I need to, do all these extra things rather than look outside for my issue of what was wrong that was not making me happy? I decided to start looking inside. And so I basically just became a guy who decided to figure something out, and I figured it out within myself. And then, long story short, I kind of figured it out that psychology didn't have it figured out yet either. And so I kind of had this hiccup where I was like, well, there's no way that, a person with no psychology background can figure out the source and the catalyst of pain and suffering in humans. And so, I basically went straight to the top, and I'm a person who doesn't like to waste time. So I went to PhDs at Georgia Tech and MIT, and these are the world's leading minds in emotions and emotions computing, and people who have spoken on the stage at TED and that type of thing. I was an alumnus of the Advanced Technologies Development Center at Georgia Tech, so I had access to those guys. And I said, okay, well, here it is. Here's the way I think that emotions work. Tell me what I missed. Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me that I'm, hand me my hat, pat me on my head, and send me on my way so that I can go on and do something else, because this is an unanswered question in my mind that I want to make sure that, I didn't really figure something out. And so I said, where am I crazy? And the feedback was, after I presented the model, well, you're not crazy and you need to publish, because this is the best model for cognitive catalysis of emotions that we've seen. And so for the next number of months, I did a white paper that I sent to both Georgia Tech and MIT, and then I turned that into a book, How Emotions Work in Humans and Computers. So if there's any computer geeks out there listening, if you want to understand the next latest, greatest technology as far as, understanding targeted advertising and things like that, the next latest, greatest thing is going to be targeted advertising based on emotional states of the users. You want to figure that billion-dollar puzzle out, go read my book. But so I did that, and then I integrated all this new type of model into my podcast to start explaining to people why they feel angry, why they feel sad, why they feel fearful, why they have the emotional reactions that they do. Because Psych 101, going back to the basics, says if you can understand your emotions and you can name your emotions and you can see them happening, you're less a victim of them and you're more in control of them, and thus more in control of your life.
And I started using that in just these 2 short days. I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts. I've listened to your book. It's a great book, by the way. And all this, the link to your book, the link to your website and your podcast will all be in my show notes. So, and the thing about it is, it really works. It really, once you start to understand what's going on, it really works. So today, when I said to you, the me is very excited to see you. Yeah. The me is a technique you told me about to take myself out of the situation. Now, we briefly talked before we got here. I have an autistic son. He's 11 years old. He sometimes drives me crazy. I always say, I don't know what part of this is his autism and what part of this is he's my son. So the other day we were there, he did something. I started to get very angry about what he did. And I said to me, the me is very angry. I took myself outside of that, and I could see at the time, and then I could calm down and look at the problem, because I'm a troubleshooter. By nature, I'm a troubleshooter. So once I took the emotions out of it, then I could focus on the problem.
Yeah.
So then I said to myself, hey, this is what I need this is what I've been looking for as far as weight loss, to get my emotions, to deal with my emotions, to get out of my emotions. Not that I'm not dealing with them, but to deal with them from an analytical perspective more than a feeling perspective. Did you ever think about this as far as helping people with weight loss?
Yes, certainly. In fact, I mention in just a couple of the episodes about it was way back in the teens episodes, I think, but I mentioned a couple of examples, like in the major concepts of me explaining sadness and depression, I think is one of those things that when your body image, and I'll explain in a couple minutes. I think we should probably go through the basics, but I explained in that episode about sadness and depression. I think I mentioned body image being one of the things that can not match our expectation or preference, and so that's something that is prolonged. And so, I certainly had the idea that this type of stuff could assist folks with body weight issues or body image issues, to help them understand at least what the negative spiral was and the snowball effect of the emotional reaction to our weight. Because, hey, I got an extra 20, 25 pounds to lose, and it's certainly, I'm not pleased with it. And so that's something that I have to live with every moment of every day until I fix it. And I'm doing the things that I need to do. I'm with diet and exercise, and I'm managing the emotions. I certainly did see a benefit with folks that have weight issues with their weight. I'm not saying people that have weight issues because that's a judgmental thing, but people who have issues with their weight from an internal perspective, because there are a lot of fat people out there who are happy about it.
No,
I don't know.
No, they're not.
No, any issue with it.
That's not true. I'll tell you that right now. I call shenanigans on that, because I'll tell you right now.
You don't think there are a bunch of big full black women out there?
No, I don't.
Bam.
I'll tell you why. Because if I would do like the Matrix and I gave them a blue pill and a red pill and said, listen, you take the red pill, you continue to be fat and happy and live your life, and I gave you the blue pill and you took that and you look like Beyonce, I'll tell you right now, there's not anybody that's taking that red pill. They're all taking that blue pill. So just so you know, it's a lie that we tell ourselves. So that being said, I do want to get into what you're saying, and I just want to use myself as a guinea pig like I always do. So what I'm going to tell you, Sean, right now is I have a problem with depression and anger. And I don't know how to deal with those anger issues and the depression, because I say myself, I take shots at myself, make jokes of myself before anybody else does, because it doesn't hurt as much. So when someone comes up to me and says to me something like, I can see the diet's going well, or whatever that is, it bothers me and it actually makes me want to eat. So can you help me explain to me why I'm doing this?
Yes. Okay. Well, first, let's talk about the why we eat as a comfort food. And man, let me tell you, I got some comfort foods. I love food, and so
me too.
And changing diet is one of the toughest things that you can do, but it's one of the best things that you can do. One of the most interesting side quotes that I heard was the guy who played what's his face, the X-Men movie just came out just recently. God, now my brain is shutting down on us.
That's okay.
But the guy's like ripped. He's got abs, and you can see his veins in his arms and stuff like that. And he was like, about 90% of that is diet. It's not really the exercise. It's not really the working out. So I thought that was interesting. But the reason that we run to comfort foods is because of that internal wiring that we have that tells us to eat things that are rich in fats and sugars and stuff like that. Because a long time ago, 1,000 years ago, it used to be tough to get food. And so now in this different world where we have a bunch of food all over the place, that wiring hasn't rewired to say stop eating and stop being satisfied. And so we run to food because of our emotional turmoil, because there's that button in our bodies, in our stomachs that says, yes, you're supposed to have this stuff in your body, and you're supposed to be eating stuff that's high in fat and high in energy, high in sugar, because we used to need that in a time that we didn't have as good a control on the food distribution system. And so we run to those comfort foods when we're feeling emotional stress and emotional issues. And so we can talk about, you want to talk about the basics of emotion and the science of emotions, and then we can bring it back into how it all plays into.
Yeah, I do, because it's a fascinating thing, and I don't want to screw it up because you're the expert on this, but yes, because I think that is it. That's the holy grail of this. So
okay, and I agree. And so, emotions, understanding our emotions basically gives us control back of our entire lives, because a lot of the stuff that we do as overweight folks is subconscious. And it's us kind of ignoring the process, and us understanding the process gives us a really good control over it. So basically, emotions are a subconscious process within our brain. We cannot control the process that creates our emotions, just like we can't control our digestion or our circulation or our heartbeat or the contraction of our irises. It is a subconscious process of the brain. So then we need to ask, okay, well, what is the brain? Well, the brain is the organ that helps us prolong our survival in life. And whether you want to believe that was created or evolved, it doesn't really matter. The brain is the organ that helps us prolong our survival. Because when we come out of mommy's belly, we have a ton of information within us to, be able to control digestion, respiration, circulation, immune system, et cetera. All that stuff's working properly if we're lucky. But then we're also a clean slate so that we can start to learn about our environment and about ourselves. Because learning about our environment and learning about ourselves helps us understand how to survive longer, because we need to understand that a bear is not a safe thing to be around, and we need to understand where food and shelter can be found and that type of thing. And then we need to understand ourselves as well, so that we can understand how fast we can run, how close we can get to that bear before before we're in danger, how far we can jump so that we don't try to jump over something too big and fall down and die. And so understanding our environment and understanding ourself is critical. And so our mind starts to soak up everything about us, about ourselves, about our environment, and it starts to build what are a number of attachments that come into being as our sense of self, because this understanding of ourself becomes what psychology calls our sense of self. And so, everything, as we're babies, our understanding of sense of self is basically our senses. It's our taste, it's our listening, it's our visual. And then something interesting happens where mommy says, she points at herself, says mommy, and then points at you and says your name. Okay, so now your sense of self starts to adapt. And you say, okay, I must be everything within the confines of my skin, because she's pointing at everything outside of my skin, naming it. And she's pointing to me and giving me my name, and so I must be the things within my skin, and I must be my name. And these are attachments that are put into what I call this attachment map. And so the attachment map it basically equates to our sense of self. And as these attachments grow, we start to understand more about ourselves, and we start to understand more about our environment. And later in life, we make all kinds of attachments. Our political party, our religious organizations, our favorite sports teams, our favorite color, these types of things become attachments that become our sense of self. Now, emotions are designed to help us survive longer, because when a bear walks out of the woods in front of us, that's a danger to us. So our irises contract, our adrenaline floods into our bloodstream, and we are prepped for fight or flight in that situation. And that's a good, healthy emotion, because that is an emotion that can help us survive, run faster, run longer, away from that bear to be able to survive.
Right. Then we also... I was going to say, the one thing also is if me and you walked there and we saw the bear and we looked at each other, we would also eye up each other and say, I don't have to outrun faster than the bear. I just have to outrun you.
That's true.
The mind is a wonderful thing.
So, where emotions, go off the track a little bit is where now in our, 1,000 years ago when we had the attachment to ourself and our life and our body as our sense of self, now we've got all these other things that become our sense of self, or associated with our world, associated with who we are and what we think about when we think of me. So when we have an attachment to, our favorite sports team, for instance, and they're about to be beaten by the Chicago Bears in the Super Bowl, we feel a physiologically identical fear to when the bear walks out of the woods in front of us. We are now feeling the same exact type of fear when our favorite sports team is about to be beaten by the Bears in the Super Bowl. Not that the Bears could ever make the Super Bowl. Thank you, 1985. So at the point that we have all these attachments and our sense of self interacting with our perceptions, that's what's creating these extra emotions that we're having to deal with that aren't necessarily life-threatening, but that are affecting us in negative ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It absolutely makes sense. See, because here's the thing. Me, myself, and many people like me have been overweight for a very long time. So
right.
Our senses are taking in, and this is what I call our fatitude. It's right. Our fat attitude. And we don't think like normal people because we've been treated in a way by others because of our weight, and it actually degrades us to ourselves. And here's the other thing. We know how we are. In other words, you say you have 20 pounds to lose and you're not happy about that. I would cartwheel if I only had 20 pounds to lose.
Right.
So that whole thing, that whole attitude we've had for our whole lives has actually changes, conformed us into something else. And to try to let that go is why I think we need the model, the diagram that you're going to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Because, it all plays back into our sense of self, and our sense of self is critical because every one of our emotions, every one of your emotions that you will ever have in your entire life is all related to your sense of self, all related to the attachments of ideas that you have in your mind. I'll go into the equation of emotion real quick and give a couple examples. I can simplify emotional processing into what I call the equation of emotion. Now, we have attachments to ideas in our mind, and it could be attachments to as simple things as, I would like my day to go good for me today, or it could be, I want to be thinner and healthier, okay? And that attachment to that idea within our mind is part of our sense of self. We may not be thin, but we have an attachment to the idea of we would like to be thinner or healthier or whatever it is that's associated with your level of health. So that then creates an expectation or preference. Every one of your attachments within your sense of self has an expectation or preference assigned to it, and most of it is based on our evolution or creation, that our sense of self be prolonged. Our brain is that organ that helps us prolong survival. So our expectation or preference about every one of our attachments is that it be held static or increased in valuation. Because at the point we're starting to lose valuation of our ideas or our sense of self, that's when we're starting to die. Like when the bear walks out of the woods and he takes our arm, we're losing a portion of our sense of self. We're losing a portion that's a devaluation to our body. And so that's what emotions are all about. And so you have an expectation or preference, and then you have this thing called perception. You have the world as it's being presented to you. So the equation of emotion is this simple. Expectation and or preference, EP, as compared to RP, the reality as perceived or your perception, equals an emotional response. And so when the expectation or preference is met or similar to your reality as perceived, such as if you want your favorite sports team to win the championship, and they do win the championship, you have a positive emotion that comes as a result. If your expectation and or preference is of an attachment is different than your perception, such as you want your favorite sports team to win the game and they don't win the game, you have a negative reaction. Now, in our example of weight, if you have an expectation or preference of wanting to be a thinner, more healthier person, and your reality as perceived, every time you get on the scale, every time you go to the doctor, it reminds you, every time you look in the mirror, your perception is that you're not meeting your expectation or preference, you have a negative emotion every time that you're faced with that perception. And so in the event that you don't have an expectation or preference about something, let's say you don't care about, rugby or whatever it is, and whoever wins the rugby championship, you don't really care because the equation of emotion isn't filled. Similarly, if you have a favorite sports team and they're playing the championship and you don't know who won the game, let's say you're on vacation or you're wherever, you will not have an emotional reaction about the game itself. Yes, it could be driving you crazy that you don't know the score of the game, but that's your expectation or preference about wanting to know the score of the game versus not knowing the score of the game. So anytime one side or the other of the equation of emotion isn't filled, you don't have any emotional reactions. And then anytime it's balanced, you have positive emotions. Anytime it's imbalanced, you have negative emotions. Now, there are a lot of details about which emotion. There are some variables that will help decide what, whether it's fear group or anger group or sadness group or worry or regret or, one of the 50 plus emotions that I talk about in my book. There are other variables, but from a basic standpoint, any time that you're having an emotional reaction, you will always be able to ask yourself, what is my expectation or preference in this situation? And what is my perception in this situation? And that will tell you why you're having that emotion that you're having. And the cool thing is, when you start to play with your expectation or preference, or you start to play with your perception, you can start to take control of your emotions, which is extremely cool.
Right. So if I can just roll that into what I was thinking about the diet is, one of the reasons I think diets fail is because our expectation is we are finally going to do this. So we have this great expectation. We really want this to happen. So then we go step on what I call the false prophet, the scale, and we haven't lost what we thought. So we have that negative feedback. And then we have a loss of self-worth or because we didn't do it and that failure. Right. So then we decide to either give up and since we are so heightened now to do this, it makes that failure so much more than if we weren't really dieting and we just stepped on a scale and went, look at that, I gained 3 pounds. It wasn't a big deal. But since our whole thought process right now is in losing weight, and we step on that scale and we didn't lose anything, or we gained weight. Oh my God. Well, I can't do this.
Right, exactly. Or I'm failing or whatever it is, and that is of self devaluation even more. And you're hitting on something very deep here and very profound, because I listened to your podcast and you said that there are some people out there who don't even want to get on the scale, and they have a tough time getting out and even getting started and exercising and stuff like that. The reason that is because they do have an expectation or preference in their mind that they would rather be healthier or thinner or whatever, different than the body image that they're seeing when they look in the mirror or when they step on the scale. They have an expectation or preference that is different from what they know that they're going to be faced with when they look in the mirror. Like, one of the things, I gained a bunch of weight a long time ago and lost it. And one of the things that I noticed when I had the weight on, I would only look myself in the mirror in the eyes, and that's it. I wouldn't look at the fat rolls. I wouldn't look at my sagging boobs as a man. I wouldn't look at, the things that I didn't like. I would look at my face and my eyes, and that's it. I wouldn't look anywhere else. Why? Because I did not want to be faced with the negative emotion that would occur had I given myself that extra perception of, oh, well, look at that extra little fat roll there. Look at those love handles there. And that stops us from even getting started, because even taking the action of getting out and taking a walk admits to yourself that you're fat, which brings on a negative emotion. So a lot of people would rather just ignore it. You give it lip service and you say, I really want to lose weight. I really want to lose weight. But then when it comes down, where the rubber meets the road, you don't want to take the action, because the negative emotion is automatically occurring within you, because you're having to face the fact that you have some extra weight that you want to get rid of. Well, and that can be paralyzing. That can stop you before you even get started, because if you don't want to get on the scale and face the fact that you have some extra weight that you want to get rid of, just like any addiction, you can't be in denial. To be able to, go through any 12-step program, the first thing that you have to admit to yourself is that you have a problem.
Well, so I'm sorry. I thought what I was just going to say was, I'm sitting here listening to you talk about that, and I just noticed that we are doing a video chat via Skype for this. You're in North Carolina, I'm in New Jersey, and I looked at your video coming in and my video going out. Your video coming in, you have a from waist up shot. My video going out was a headshot right on my head, because I didn't want you to see the size of me. So what I did was I just rolled you
exactly the way you are. And by the way, everybody listening to this who's big and beautiful and is working on their weight or their body image, I love everyone unconditionally, regardless of life situation, or whether you're hooked on crack or whether your issue is weight or whatever it is. I got zero issue with anybody. I'm here to help everybody change the way they want to change.
Well, I immediately took my camera and zoomed out, so now you can see. You can see here I am. Yeah. Same thing. Same way. But I didn't even realize I was doing that. That shot was so much on my head. And when you said that, I was like, oh, look at this. There you are. You're standing in your studio. You're from waist up. I can see you. And you're moving around. And here I am. I got that thing so close on my head that, and I said to myself, look at that. He's absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's what I said. It's the fatitude, my fatitude. I'll say it, my fatitude about myself, about myself, that makes me do stuff like this, and I'm not even realizing that I'm doing it, and people don't even realize that they do it.
No, it's a subconscious process. All emotions are a subconscious process, and until we understand our emotions, we can't even really understand what's going on inside until we actually take a look at our emotions, right? And so understanding our emotions helps us take a step back, like that episode 6 you talked about, the me. The podcast that I do, the first 25 episodes or so is basically the Body, Mind, Spirit 101, and it teaches you basically everything you need to know, or almost everything you need to know, about who and what you are as a human being. And so there's this perception of self in the first few episodes that you understand a little bit better about. And so being able to step away from that helps you govern your emotions better. I mean, emotions are a subconscious process, but you can take control of variables that feed into that automated process. And at that point, you're starting to take control of your emotions, at which point that you can start to make crazy amounts of change in your life, and including being able to knock out any issues with weight and body and things like that. Because, at the point that you start taking control of your emotions, you start taking control of the thing that's been governing yourself. One of the favorite quotes that I have is from Horace. It says, "Control your mind or it will control you." Taking control of your mind and your emotions will literally change your life in every way, not just, reducing the amount of weight on your body and being able to do the things mentally that you need to do that. We're talking about relationships with people. We're talking about being able to handle stress, which kills people faster. We're talking about being able to handle anger, because I definitely want to talk about that before we get off this podcast. If you have anger emotions.
I'll tell you what, we have, I could talk to you all, Sean, I could talk to you all day. Because I just saw your other podcast, we'll jump back in it, but just to break off this a little bit, I try to meditate, and I don't really think I do it well and then I listen to your latest podcast where you talk about meditation. I'm like, oh, okay. But not even realizing there were so many meditations, because whenever I first thought of meditation, it was, you kind of thought there was some sitar music, and, you have to say this word over and over again. Yeah, and then you get the whole thing is, well, I'm a Christian, and Christians don't meditate. That's not what we do. So
Christians definitely meditate. Yeah.
Well, Jesus meditated. So I mean, totally. Yeah. So the whole concept of meditation, I thought I was doing it wrong, but then after listening to you, I realized that I was just in the beginning stages of it. If I keep going, that it'll get better. You just won't do it at the same time.
Yeah. Right. Regarding meditation, it's just like playing the piano. I mean, you don't sit down at a piano and expect to be a master and play a concerto your first time out. You have to learn the basics. You have to practice very, minuscule techniques, and you have to make a lot of mistakes along the way to be able to get good at anything. I mean, baseball, piano, being a good coder and programmer, that type of thing, you have to learn the basics and you have to practice it to be able to be more experienced at it and get a better control at it. And the same thing's true with meditation. You have to start with a low expectation that says, I'm going to have absolutely no control over my mind. There's going to be absolutely no quiet in my mind whatsoever. But the longer I do it, the better I'm going to be at it. And the cool thing about plasticity, let's talk about that for a second. Massachusetts General did a study where they showed meditation changes brain structure in as little as 8 weeks. Because a lot of people used to think that the brain is it's built, and then it's what you see is what you get, and you could never change it. Well, that is not the case. Hundreds of studies now have proven that if you use your right hand, for instance, for everything and never use your left hand, the portion of your brain that uses your right hand or that controls your right hand will grow, and the portion of your brain that controls your left hand will shrink. And it's just like with being able to meditate and take control of your thoughts and your emotions, things like that. Once you start doing that, your brain actually changes to help you in that process. And it's not like you have to do this 20 years. 8 weeks and you're making changes. 2 months and you're making changes that will help you create a positive snowball effect to help you take better control of your mind. And that's key, because when you're talking about meditation, you're talking about reducing stress, and a lot of people are worried about their health from a weight perspective listening to this podcast. And so you've got studies that show, like the Institute for National Medicine and Prevention, they did a 10-year study, split people into 2 groups. And the first group they told to eat right and exercise. And the second group, they said, okay, we want you to meditate for 20 minutes twice a day. And 10 years later, this is a long-term study, the people who meditated reduced their heart attack and stroke by 66% over the diet and exercise folks. And so for the folks who, could only meditate for about once a day, they reduced their heart attack and stroke by almost 50% over the diet and exercise folks. But the folks who were diet and exercising were having 2/3 more heart attacks and strokes than the people who were simply meditating twice a day. And then the meditators also reported dramatic reductions in anger. They reported reducing fatigue, increasing their alertness, increasing their concentration, and enhancing their cognitive function in tests. and they had a 50% decrease in the noise that created a lot of their stress in the first place. Because the brain is this thing that's supposed to, and emotions are part of this process. The brain throws up all this stuff in front of us. Is this important? Is this important? Is this important? And is this important? And 1,000 years ago, when we're having to fight for our survival every few days, that type of thing, or figure out how to feed ourselves more often, that's important. But now that we're dealing with, okay, is this important that this person's getting kicked off American Idol? Is this important that we're watching this thing on the news? Is this important? All these things get thrown up into our conscious view by our mind. Well, the more that happens, the higher stress level is created in our minds, in our brains, in our bodies, and that really can have a negative impact on our health, which then can also influence our weight.
Well, because right now we're doing everything as a life experience. I mean, we're all multitaskers. So what happens is, like, I was working in the elevator business as a supervisor. I had 1,000 things to do every day. I knew that I was only going to do 600. So I had the stress of those 400 things that I couldn't get done due to the time. Now, did I worry about, did I praise myself for getting 600 things done? No way. I villainized myself for the 400 things I couldn't get done. Not only did I, but so did my boss. So that brings that stress around, and to be able to take that noise out, it has to be tremendous.
It's scientifically proven. I mean, there was a David Meyer study at University of Michigan showed that higher stress levels equate to higher stress hormones, and higher stress hormones and cortisol literally help you die faster. They kill you, and so your mindful stress can be more destructive than any physical stress that weight can have on your body. So taking control of your mind really is the first step to weight loss. It's being able to control the stress hormone, being able to control the cortisol, which helps in reducing the amount of energy that your body wants to store. And then that also then helps you be of the mindset to be able to change your actions and change your lifestyle for the better, to have the goals that you want to attain.
So this basically, to be honest with you, is step one. If you want to obtain a better lifestyle, because forget about it, I'm never going to look like Brad Pitt. I'm never going to look like that guy from the X-Men movie. I'm never going to do that. And I accept that, because all I want to do right now is get my quality of life back. 2 years ago, Sean, I'll tell you right now, I couldn't walk 100 yards without completely out of breath, heart pounding, and knees and back aching. Now I can walk, basically you can walk about 1.5 miles. So that part of my life, I got that life back. I was in prison, and I know my listeners are in prison too, and they think that they can't do this. And this is step one. Forget all that diet and exercise. Don't even try diet and exercise right now. Just get this down, and that will come around.
Exactly, because everyone listening to this podcast knows what they're supposed to do.
We've all
Everyone
dieted.
gets the same message. Yeah. It's always, everyone you talk to, it's always diet and exercise. But here's the problem, is that people have a problem getting on that train because of their mind not being in control. And so if their emotions and their mind are not in control, that's what's going to keep people from getting on that diet and exercise train. Ultimately, yes. I mean, it's going to take some diet and exercise, but that isn't the first step. The first step is being able to get on that train, right? Because, and you stay on the train, because a lot of people will try it and for a few days, and they'll be cheating because they're hungry and because they're wanting to hit that sated button in their stomach that helps make the emotional problem or emotional trouble go away. You got to get that under control first before you even attempt the mechanics of it all.
I totally agree. Now, listen, I know I sidetracked you with the meditation. I'm the worst at this because I jump all around because I'm excited to talk to you. And I've just started listening to you, so I have all these kind of crazy questions. And trust me, I will be asking you other questions later down the road. But getting back to the anger, because that's one of the things that I have to deal with the most, and one of the things that derails me the most.
Okay.
You said you had something to talk to us about anger and how to handle anger through this.
Oh, totally. Well, see, the equation of emotion is basic. It's expectation and a preference as compared to your perception. And when those things don't match, that creates an emotional reaction. Now, specifically, there are these emotion groups, and anger is an emotion group, and sadness is an emotion group. Now, what I mean by that is that psychology has 70 some individual emotions that they identify and a number of basic emotions. And they say anger is one of the basic emotions. Well, basically, anger identifies and represents 5 different levels or 5 different separate emotions. In fact, you could probably even say 6 or 7 or more, but you can delineate it into 5. They have a level of severity. So anger at the very lightest level is an annoyance. And then at a little higher level of anger, you have a frustration. And then in the middle, you have anger. Up at near the top, you have hate. And at the very top, you have rage when people lose control and that type of thing. And so the rule for anger, now remember our attachment map, all the things that we have that we're attached to. Our body is in the very center of that attachment map. We all identify that the thing that we see when we look in ourselves in the mirror, that's a portion of us. As well as then we have religion and politics and our thoughts and feelings and all these other things that come into our sense of self. Anger is when something off your attachment map attacks something on your attachment map. So let's say you have a favorite sports team, it's on your attachment map. Someone comes up and says, your sports team sucks. Depending on how much you're attached to that sports team and how seriously you take that perception, the power level of those combined, will dictate directly proportional how much anger you feel in that situation. If you only like the team a little bit, you may be slightly annoyed if you take the attack seriously. If you love the team and you don't take the attack seriously, you still might be slightly annoyed. If you love the team and take the attack very, very seriously, you're going to be angry at that person. And you may start an argument with that person about, the team doesn't suck and yada, yada, yada. That's how anger works. And anger doesn't necessarily have to be a person. It could be just something that happens. Let's say, you're watching a movie online or whatever, and your internet connection goes down. The event of that internet connection going down has now attacked your expectation or preference to want to watch that movie. And so that could make you angry at the internet provider that their pipe went down to your house again. And now it's inhibiting your ability to watch the movie. Something outside your attachment map has attacked something inside your attachment map, and that creates anger. And so anytime that you're feeling anger, the first step to changing that or taking control of it is asking yourself, what is my expectation or preference regarding this moment, and what has occurred, what event has occurred that it is now attacking my attachment, my expectation or preference? What is attacking the thing that I'm attached to? And at the point that you're taking that conscious step to taking a look at the situation, you're now putting a thick black wall between you and the emotion. It's still there. It's still affecting you a little bit, but now it's not affecting you nearly as much as it would if you were just letting yourself be controlled by it and not looking at it from a practical, pragmatic, analytical perspective.
Some of the things that I think is when if I relate this back to the diet and exercise or the way of eating, is you want to eat a certain way and you didn't that day. So now, in other words, you had a failure, all right, but that doesn't make you a failure because you can always do that tomorrow. No matter what you eat in one day is not really going to have that much of effect on you throughout the week. So if you have one bad day, that's fine. So what happens is you get angry and then you start to say, well, I can't do this, and why can everybody else do this? And then that anger continues to build because you know yourself that you should be able to do this. Why is this the only thing in your life that you can't seem to get under control? So when you say, to kind of take yourself out of that, say, well, the me is angry and the me is upset because I didn't do what I wanted to do today. I didn't do what I planned to do today. It kind of takes you out of that. And then you can, once you're out of that, it really does drop the emotion of anger inside you. How you break the one chain. If you take one of those steps, one of those pieces out of the puzzle, there's no more. You can't have that emotion. That's what I love about this model.
Yeah, if you guys want to go watch episodes 4, 5, and 6 of the I Am Podcast, you can find it at iampodcasts.com or iamspirituality.com. Or you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on iTunes. 4, 5, and 6 will basically explain everything that John's talking about there. I talk about the equation of emotion in episode 4. I talk about the attachment map or ego in episode 5. And then in episode 6, we give a good little tool that says, okay, your attachment map is what you perceive to be yourself. It is your mind's picture of yourself. And any time that you're having an emotional reaction, there's this thing called the me. What is your me is the things that are attached to your map. It's what you see when you look at yourself from your mind's eye. And so at any point that you can verbally say, the me doesn't like that, or the me is angry with that, or the me is sad today, or whatever it is, you are now bringing your perception away from your sense of self, and you're taking control of your emotional well-being. Because at the point that there's this called the true self and false self concept. Your false self is that attachment map. Your false self is your idea of things. It's who you are in the world. It's how you think of yourself. And your true self is who and what you are when no one else is around and when nothing else really matters. It's that observing, conscious entity that exists beyond all the attachments that you've put on that you try to pull out and put in front of people when they say, "Who are you?" Right? Who and what are you? All the answers that you could ever think of verbally are this false self, this me. And so at the point that you can draw yourself back up into that kind of spiritual existence, or this more Zen or Jedi existence beyond the attachments that you're identifying with yourself, you can then be less affected by your emotions and less affected by the processes of your brain and your mind. Now that's important, because at the point that you can take control of that process, you're no longer controlled by that process. And that's the space that we can start to create ourselves or recreate ourselves as what we would rather be.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's the thing. Sean's podcasts are amazing. They're a video podcast, and I don't normally like video podcasts for the simple fact that I have to watch it. I can't just put it in my ears and go. But right. I love your podcast because you need the visual. Because you bring up the map of the diagram of the emotions, and you need that. And I can't do justice for what you do in this brief amount of time. You, at the end of your podcast, give a homework assignment. I will give my first homework assignment in episode 18. You please go to the show notes, go to iampodcast.com and check out episodes 2. Why was there no episode 1? That does bug me. What happened to episode 1?
It was just intro. It was just what this podcast is going to be, that type of thing. And it did include the stuff that I was talking about in the Body, Mind, Spirit 101, but a lot of it was fluff and a lot of it was just unnecessary. And so I was like, I'm just going to take this episode down. This is silly. All
right. Well, I had to ask that question because I was thinking about that. What happened to episode 1? So go listen to episodes 2 through 25. I'm at 14 right now. I'm at 14. And I also started listening to 96 is what your latest one is, and I'll go backwards. That's one of the things I love about podcasts is you can jump right in and go from the beginning and catch up, and then from the back to the front. Matter of fact, I just started watching Dexter for the first time a couple months ago. I watched 7 seasons of in a month. I couldn't stop watching it. It was the most amazing show. And this is how I feel about you. You're like Dexter. Your show is amazing. What you do is amazing. I can't believe it's taken. You've been doing this for 3 years. I can't believe this. I'm finding out about this for the first time.
I'm horrible at marketing. I'm atrocious at. I put it out there and I let people find it, and I get a lot of good emails that a lot of positive feedback and stuff that like soldiers with PTSD and parents of autistic kids and stuff like that send me saying thank you so much. I can't believe this is so awesome, but for some reason it's like I haven't put the time and effort into getting it out there, that type of thing. And so I wanted to come on your podcast as part of that effort to say, hey, that type of thing. I was listening to your podcast a few episodes ago about Dr. Callahan and his position on beating fat people up, and I was just like, man, John is so on with his reaction to this because having talked about anger, we can talk about sadness for a second. Sadness that keeps us down as overweight people, things like that. Sadness is the definition of sadness is any time that any one of your attachments on your attachment map gets devalued. you feel sadness. And when there's an actual real devaluation on your attachment map of one of your attachments, sadness occurs. So if grandma dies, grandma is a part of your life. She's an attachment. She takes a devaluation, scientifically speaking. It sounds callous to say, but scientifically speaking, that's what's going on, is that grandma's taken a devaluation on the map and you feel sad. Depending on how attached you are, if grandma helped raise you, you feel it's a level of grief that is unequaled. If grandma lived in some foreign country and you never met her and you got a birthday card from her one time, you're not that attached to her, so you're more disappointed that she died. Well, one of the things that we have to deal with being overweight is not beating ourselves up and not letting other people beat ourselves up. Because at the point that we have an expectation or preference about being thin or about our success level or about whatever it is, and we are faced with another fact that says we are not meeting our expectation and our preference regarding that attachment, that creates sadness within us every time. And so Dr. Callahan doesn't understand psychology. All due respect to Dr. Callahan as a psychologist, he doesn't understand the fact that if you come at people with negativity, it's going to create more sadness, and that is going to inhibit their growth as an individual and their capability to get started. And so I thought you handled that wonderfully a couple of episodes.
Well, thank you.
I just wanted to keep...
And the thing about it is, like I said, one of the homework assignments is please go to Sean's website, theimpodcast.com, and start watching and listening. And everything, here you go, is free. It's free, totally. Ladies and gentlemen. Now, his book, How Emotions Work. Did I get the title right? Because I don't have my notes in front of me.
Emotions Work in Humans and Computers. It's my first book. I'm going to put out a lot better book coming up later this year. But this one's pretty decent. I was told to get a stake in the ground. I was told to publish this by the folks who are very high up in psychology and emotions research, stuff like that, because they're like, you're not a PhD and someone could come and steal this from you if they publish it first. So just get something out there. And so that's what this book is about. It does explain 50 some emotions, and it does explain the basics of the body, mind, spirit model 101 to how your emotions work. It doesn't drive it home in how to take that to the next step. So if you're a person who can help figure out for yourself how to take it to your next step, or you just want to understand how your emotions work, it's a great book for that. If you want to understand how to program emotions, a portion of the book is dedicated to programming emotions for computers, which is going to be the next step for computer sentience, that kind of cool stuff. But I think understanding that basic stuff is the first step in being able to take control of it, because like you talked about earlier, if you understand the mechanisms and the variables that create your emotions, the things you're holding on to, like even your past failures, when you release that stuff, when you release your past failures and you release and forgive yourself of those mistakes that you've made in the past, and you realize that the only time that ever exists is right now, and that you have to create past in your memory and you have to create future in your imagination, and that the only time that exists is right now, that is a very empowering thought, because now you can forget everything that you've done in the past, forget all your past failures, find out where you are today, and find out what you need to do right now to get to where you want to be.
And also, you can get his book free if you haven't signed up for audible.com. Go to Sean's website. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know what this website is to go right to the link?
Yeah, totally. It won't take you directly to my book, but if you sign up for Audible, you can get a free book, which you can get, any book. If you want to go get Games of Thrones, that's fine. Knock yourself out. That's any book is free, but you go to Audible Trial /I am spirituality, all one word. So it's audibletrial.com/I am spirituality. And then you sign up for their free 30-day trial. And you get a free book. And if you want to cancel, that's fine. But you get to keep the free book. And if you wind up staying a member, I've been a member for 6 years. I think it's awesome. The author of the book or a professional voice talent reads the book to you. So it's like you can listen in the car, you can listen while you're out walking or in the gym or doing dishes or mowing the lawn, and have the author read the book to you. It's friggin' awesome. And it only winds up being like $11 a book on average. I love them. So, you can get a free book if you use that link.
And if you go on Sean's link, what that does is that's a what they call an affiliate link, and he will get a little piece of something to help him with the cost of doing all this stuff. So that's the homework assignment. Go to the website, check out the videos, download the PDF of the diagram, the emotion diagram, and then if you want to, and if you haven't been part of the website, I can't even think of the website name now. Help me. Audible.com. Go through his link and check out his book. I've listened to it. You're right. Sean gets in my ears and reads me his book for free. I mean, you can't beat that. So, Sean, thank you so much for doing all this and coming on here. Like I said, it's a surreal thing to be listening to you and being amazed, and now sitting here and looking at you across, Skype and talking to you in like 2 days. It's amazing, and I just wanted to get this to my listeners because I think it's so important.
Well, I do think it's important, and I love communications technology because, even 30, 40, 50 years ago, you find a new discovery like this, right? You find a new way to figure out how to explain emotions and how to bring people a heightened level of inner peace, which, by the way, if you get on there and you start sharing this, if we raise all our inner peace, we're going to raise world peace. And that's what Gandhi said. The only way to world peace is through inner peace. But this wonderful communications technology, 50 years ago, I would have had to die first before, to outlive and have all the other psychologists who are going to, poo-poo this and say, well, he's not a psychologist, and yada, yada, yada. I do have a research team of PhDs, and in fact, a couple of them are the world's leading experts on pushing this forward. But there would have had to have been a long period of time before any of these ideas were tested and gotten out into the open and then taught in schools before anyone could take advantage of them. And today, it's awesome. I figure it out. I run it by some experts. They give it their seal of approval, and we start getting it out to everybody immediately so you can change your life starting today. I think that's just friggin' awesome. And again, I love your podcast, and I love what you're doing.
Well,
I think it's awesome. And anytime you want me to be a guest, you just give me a call, and we'll do the next round, whatever you want to talk about.
I will do that. But here's the other thing that I just wanted to say. All this time, you've had this out for over 2 years now? Okay. Anybody refute this yet?
No.
Not one person?
No, not at all. Well, because it works. I mean, here's the reality. The psychologists that are interested in it say, well, we need more science around it. I mean, the evidence that we've put together, every psych study in history supports a microscopic view, supports one of the little snapshots that the model talks about and the model explains. So all of it is based and supported by the research. There are some portions that need some research, and that's why we're talking about creating some studies and things like that to support the portions of the model that aren't already supported. But beyond that, there are no studies that refute any portion of the theory in this model. Not one. In fact, before I could get anybody to listen to me, I gave actually about 12 people a $10,000 bounty. I said, if you find evidence of a person who is not otherwise diagnosable with some kind of disorder, if you find some type of exception to this model, I will give you $10,000. That's how much I wanted to help improve it or disprove it or prove that I was either right or wrong or whatever it was. I said, you find just one example that it doesn't work, I'll give you 10 grand. Not one of the PhDs could do it. And they were like, wow, this is kind of cool. We need some more science behind it, which is why we put the research team together. But no one has come out and said, this guy's crazy. This is dangerous. This is not how it works. Here's a study that disproves this or whatever. In fact, the world's leading specialists are like, wow, this is really cool. So, and that's why they're kind of on board with it.
I think it's fantastic. And like I said, I wanted to get this to my listeners. Sean, I'll tell you, an amazing job. I'm a huge fan of yours now, and will always be. And can't wait. Continue success. And like I said, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, no problem. Thank you for having me, John. I think you're understating your importance and your capability to do the same type of thing to an audience of folks who really needs it. I mean, this weight thing, you're not looking at a guy or not listening to a guy on the other end of this podcast who is, has a 6-pack abs and stuff like that. I've figured out some stuff about emotions and inner peace, and I'm still dealing with love and chocolate,
Well, I still think that I don't think you have to give it all up.
No.
One thing I will tell you is it's always the food. And one of the things that I know is that the more natural nutrition you put in your body, the better off you are. You can't overeat lettuce. You can't really overeat apples. But you can overeat stuff that is processed. So if your diet comes...
Books,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to, you spurred something, you spurred a memory. One of the greatest books that I read just recently was, I can't remember the author, but it's called Wheat Belly.
That's my next episode about wheat belly.
Oh, is it really?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes, because he talks about how wheat used to be good, and then how the big agricultural companies came in and genetically modified the wheat without having, before the days where Congress had any oversight about that kind of thing, and they made it to where you could spray Roundup on it and stuff like that, and then it changed the whole structure of wheat, and now wheat makes us fat.
Yes.
Where wheat was supposed to be good, now it's like horrible because of how they changed it.
So if your food doesn't have an expiration date on it that's within a week or two, okay, you're not eating correctly. If you're not eating out of your refrigerator, and you're eating more out of your pantry, unless it's something canned, then that is an issue. So the more that you can get to a natural diet, and I've proved it myself, because hey, listen, eating healthy is not easy. There's nothing more easier to pull up to a window and they hand you a bag of food. It's no good for you, but there's nothing easier. It's not impossible. It's just a little bit harder. So that's what I'm doing right now. Sean, again, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you, John, for having me. It's an honor. I'm really proud to be associated with your podcast now, and I think you're doing awesome stuff.
I got to tell you, what fun, what a great time I had talking to Sean. And I hope that you go to the website. I really do. I think this is step one in any kind of weight loss program where emotional eating is part of the problem. Well, that's it for this episode of Let's Reverse Obesity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I really appreciate you spending some time with me. And as always, I would love to hear from your... I already screwed it up. All right, welcome back, John. I would love to hear about your progress. I do get emails from people that hear the show for the first time, and they send me a letter back saying thank you, and it means so much to me to hear that. You can't even imagine. So how do you contact me? Well, there's a bunch of ways, but you can find them all on the Let's Reverse Obesity website at letsreverseobesity.com. In the show notes, Let's Reverse Obesity /018. You can contact me with any questions or comments. I have a listener feedback line, 856-472-9833. If you go to the website and you have a computer that's microphone hooked up to your computer, you can click the send voicemail tab right on the website and send me a voicemail there. You can also, if you have an iPhone, there is a voice pipe app that you can send me a voicemail right from your iPhone. And if you're not much of a talker and you're a typer, you can always leave a comment at the bottom of the show notes. I'm on Twitter at John Bukenas, JOHNBUKENAS. You can always email me at john@letsreverseobesity.com. And I have a Let's Reverse Obesity Facebook page and also a Google Plus page. And links to those are in the show notes at letsreverseobesity.com /018.
Okay, so was that awesome or what? I love John already. I just met him and I love him to death. He's amazing. His story is so real. It's just he's putting himself out there to say, this is my path. my stumblings and my imperfections and my successes, because he's lost over 100 pounds. I mean, that's awesome. He doesn't mention that every podcast. I know it would be selfish, but I would say, like, yeah, every podcast mention that you've lost 100 pounds. Share that success along with, the things that you're challenged with. But here's what I wanted to follow up with that I would have loved to cover in John's podcast. Maybe we'll cover it next time. But it comes up when we're talking about making change that will stick. We all know about how the attachments come to be our sense of self or our false self. And we also know how it plays into our equation of emotion. Now, when two differing motivations come into existence, the mind, the brain will urge you to defend the one that is closer to the center on your attachment map, closer to your heart, the thing that is more important to you. So, for instance, if you're standing next to a swimming pool and a big gust of wind comes along and threatens to both dump your dog into the pool, or, well, your dog can swim automatically, but let's say it starts to topple over a table that your wallet is on, and your cell phone is on, and a couple things that are going to cost you money to replace. So the table is starting to tip over into the pool, but you have time to grab it. But it also is blowing your toddler over into the pool, and your toddler doesn't know how to swim, and you're fully clothed, and the pool is deep, and they could hit their head, whatever. Which are you going to grab? Well, I mean, without even thinking, all of us, most of us, are probably just going to reach down, grab the toddler, phone, wallet, whatever, be damned. It's going to go into the pool. But at least Junior is not going to be in a life-threatening situation, right? We're just going to grab down and reach the thing that is more attached to us automatically. This happens subconsciously. It's going to defend the portion of self that is closer to our understanding of our existence. Wallet, phone, that kind of stuff can be replaced, and it's not as attached to us, although a lot of people panic when they don't have their phone or they don't have their wallet or whatever that type of thing is. Imagine the level of panic that you would have if you realized you didn't have your kid, or you didn't have something that was more important to you than your wallet or your phone or whatever. So if you want to make a lasting change in your life regarding weight or regarding anything, what you need to do is create a motivation within you that is more important to you than whatever it is that's standing in your way. Okay, so let's talk about weight specifically. Weight specifically, we can have a fear of failure, of not wanting to fail, of getting on that diet or whatever it is, or we can have the sadness that keeps us from getting on that train of weight loss and doing the diet and exercise and drinking the water and the things that we need to do to lose that weight. You need to bring into that equation, you need to bring into that situation something that you care about more than the things that you've unconsciously attached to that are stopping you from doing whatever it is that you need to do. So for instance, if you're trying to lose weight, which extra weight is going to kill you earlier, which is important. But see, the thing is that's not forefront in our mind. We don't make that attachment that the extra weight is going to kill us. Oh, which is, by the way, as a side note, why the surgeries for weight reduction work a lot of the time, is because when you get the lap band or the stomach staple or whatever you're doing, it's not necessarily the physical mechanism that is creating you to be full with a right amount of food in your stomach, although that helps. The reality is you can still overeat and expand your stomach after it's been reduced again. But the reality is if you do that, it will kill you. Literally, you will keel over dead if you eat too much after these surgeries. And so what is that doing? Well, that's taking an attachment that you're more attached to, your very life, your very body, in the dead center of your attachment map, and putting it into the situation. If you eat too much, now the things that are standing in your way become less important than keeping your very life going, keeping your very body alive. Whatever it is that has stopped you and inhibited you and allowed you to cheat and yada, 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 is now risking the most bare bones, most important attachment that you'll have on your attachment map, period. And so that's why those surgeries work. If you have kids, for instance, losing the weight for your kids and being a good parent to your kids and being around for your kids later in life when they really need you, that could be a great motivator to keep you on the wagon of diet and exercise. If you're not just failing yourself, because a lot of people will just be, it'll be another failure, that I cheated on this diet or whatever, you get used to that. When you start talking about, I'm failing my kids, I am failing being a good parent, I am failing doing the things that are necessary and setting the right examples for them, that, and a lot of people don't want to put that on because that will motivate you and it will cause a great deal of angst if you start failing. And so, but that's the type of thing that we need to do to be able to create major change in our life. We need to either release the attachments that we have that are inhibiting us or add the attachments that we really care about to the equation. So that is a key if you want to make substantial change in your life. Add one of the attachments into it that is near and dear to your heart. Find something, create something, change your mindset, add an attachment that is more important to you than whatever it is that's inhibiting you from change. And you will find that it is much easier to create and sustain change. And so I just wanted to thank John again for having me on his podcast. That was awesome. I think his podcast is amazing. Check it out. He's got multiple episodes that is equally as awesome as the one that I did with him. Yes, that is a very egoic statement. Sorry about that. I hope you guys are having a great week. I love you all. Send this episode to anyone who is having problems with weight. They will love you for it, and we will get them on the path to being healthier. Love you. Peace.